But today is day 24 of the clampdown in Jammu and Kashmir, and my top story today is on just why are Jammu and Kashmir's political leaders still in detention. India Today's Ashraf Wani was the first reporter to show you how these leaders are being detained in different guest houses in Srinagar. This even as the Supreme Court today demanded a report from the centre on the exact nature of the clampdown in the valley. It's our top story tonight.
The clampdown in Kashmir Valley completes its 24th day. Mainstream political leaders remain in detention. People in remote areas still out of touch with their loved ones outside the state. The Supreme Court on Wednesday took up two habeas corpus petitions, one filed by a Kashmiri student and another by CPM General Secretary Sitaram Yechuri. Both got favourable orders. The Kashmiri student Muhammad Aleem Saeed has been allowed to go to Anantnag and meet his parents. And Yechuri can visit Srinagar to meet ailing party leader Muhammad Yusuf Tarigami.
The direction is that I go meet him, and find out his health condition, come back and report to the Supreme Court through an affidavit. And then this case will proceed.
Almost all mainstream politicians of the valley are in detention, and they don't look like walking out anytime soon.
रिलीज तो देखो जितने बड़े नेता बनेंगे उतनी देर से होंगे.
Former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti is at the Chashme Shahi guest house away from her residence. She spends her time reading books and newspapers.
And there are many limitations on the former Chief Minister. She has not been provided by any kind of internet. She has no any kind of connectivity by the telephones where she can contact with the people or with her party leaders.
Former Chief Minister Omar Abdullah is at the Hari Niwas guest house. He keeps himself busy playing games and doing exercise. While both Omar and Mehbooba have been denied mobile phone and internet, they have access to satellite TV. Bureau Report, India Today.
So what lies ahead for Mehbooba Mufti, Omar Abdullah and the political prisoners in Kashmir and indeed the people of the state and the human costs of the clampdown? I'm joined by a very special guest today. Iltija Mufti is the daughter of former Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti. You joined me from Chennai. I appreciate your joining us. I know you've had a very tough time in the last few weeks. When was the last time, Iltija, you spoke to your mother?
The last I spoke to her was on the 5th of August when she was taken, and an IPS officer came home along with a couple of other officers, and I believe one of them was a district magistrate, and they gave us a warrant, or whatever you call it, an arrest warrant, citing the reasons as to why my mother was to be taken. And I found it very strange because right after 4th midnight we were told that she's going to be placed under house arrest, and honestly I didn't understand the need for them to detain her and to jail her, because if there's no internet, if there's no way that she can communicate with her party workers, which frankly what the government of India is paranoid about, I didn't understand the need for her to be taken in this manner. I mean, my mother is not a terrorist, and she's a former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. She's a two-time MP. So frankly, I find it quite bizarre, and it's extremely disconcerting and humiliating the manner in which she's been treated.
Are you telling me that now for the last 23 days you've not been able to get in touch with her? I've seen the letters and I have some of them, that your grandmother, that's Mehbooba's mother, is also not being allowed to meet her. Are you telling me that no family members have had any contact with her? Is she in solitary confinement? Because what we are told is she's in the Chashme Shahi guest house. So are you telling me that you've had absolutely no contact with your mother now for 23 days?
Yeah. No, I haven't. No contact whatsoever. And no matter how gilded the cage is, first of all, news reports of her having newspapers and everything is complete hogwash. It couldn't be further from the truth. Every time her luggage goes from the house, because we've had to, refill her clothes and everything, it's double checked. She's being treated like a criminal. It's checked at my residence and then it's checked at Chashma Shahi, where then after a lot of checking she gets the luggage. But no, I haven't had any communication with her whatsoever. I haven't spoken to her. I think this is the first Eid where so many families in Kashmir, including mine, couldn't contact their loved ones. And despite repeated requests to the government, to the officers there, we haven't heard back as to why why I'm not being allowed to meet my mother. I find it so, it's just bizarre.
Are you telling me that you've had no response from the authorities to all these letters that you've been writing to the divisional commissioners, to the various authorities? Is there a blanket no, or is there no reply? Is there just silence?
Let me just respond to that question and I'll take 2 minutes. I was forced to write a letter to the Home Minister, Shri Amit Shah, because despite so many written applications, I didn't get a response. And it's come to a point where, despite the fact that I'm a law-abiding Indian citizen, all Kashmiris at this moment have been stripped of their civil liberties, of their constitutional rights. And so for me, there's no choice but to tell the media that I have written letters now. I wrote another letter to DC Shahid Saab yesterday. And even for that, he did respond. Once the media picked it up, he responded and he said, well, nothing of that sort exists and you can meet your mother and we haven't received a request from you. I want to ask them, how do I put in a request when you had put me under detention for 2 weeks? How am I supposed to communicate with you when at my gate you've put padlocks on the gate? I'm not allowed to speak to anybody, and whatever written communication was passed on, the inspector asked the subordinate to trash it, to put it in the dustbin, because clearly they're not following any law here, so they don't want a paper trail. But just for my record and to tell everybody else, I've kept a record and we've documented every single letter that's gone out from our side has been documented, so that tomorrow, it can't be denied.
You've said in one of your letters, seems like efforts are being made to break my mother, torture her emotionally. Are you worried about the health of your mother? What is it that really worries you at the moment?
What worries me is that currently we're living in, an Orwellian dystopia, where you have an authoritarian regime that wants to intercept your thoughts. You're not being given the freedom to express how you feel. And despite the fact that she's been gone away from 3 weeks, they haven't even bothered asking us once that, would you like to speak to your mother? And Rajdeep, this is just not about me. I can choose to be self-centered and I can go on and on about the fact that I haven't seen my mother, but they need to answer how many people have been detained exactly. What about families where, the fathers, the brothers have been dumped in jails in Agra? They've been taken in military airplanes. What happens to them? I still have the chance, I have the opportunity that I can speak to you and I can put forth my case. But what about all these families where, they've been taken and they've been dumped in jails in Agra? But no, to answer your question, I've had no communication at all with my mother, and they are absolutely unrelenting, and it's only after my bite to the media yesterday that they reached out and they said that you can meet her, but I still don't have anything in writing, and I don't even know if things are moving, because my aunt left back for Kashmir today, and because it's such an information black hole, we don't even know what's going on. So I don't even know if they're going to be allowed to meet my mother.
We asked the governor of Jammu and Kashmir today, Iltija, about
and yes, I believe, sorry to cut you, sorry to interject you.
Yes.
I feel that she's been put under solitary confinement to break her spirit, to break her resolve. There was no reason to take her from home. It's not like our internet was working. Nobody was allowed to visit her. They've been so strict with me. I was illegally placed under detention. Nobody was allowed to see me. So I find it very hard to fathom why they felt the need to take my mother and to completely isolate her. I mean, she's been jailed, for all practical purposes. My mother has been jailed for the past 3 weeks and we have absolutely no clarity.
The reason given is, and today when we asked the governor of Jammu and Kashmir, he said that the higher you are, the longer you're likely to spend in prison, the more powerful politician you are. And the reason he seemed to suggest is if they come out, they could create trouble. That's the reason being given for them being under detention. If they come out, they could try and stage political rallies, and that, according to them, could lead to trouble.
Really? Is that true? Because on one hand, the propaganda that the media has been spreading, the static media, that's obviously made a Faustian bargain with this government. They've sold their soul. They've sold any kind of ethics that they had whatsoever. They first spread a narrative that Muftis and Abdullahs are finished. Kashmiri people are so happy, they're rejoicing. They're celebrating that they're finally out of the scene. So on one hand, you're saying that Muftis and Abdullahs don't have sway over the people. You've somehow broken the people from these shackles. You know, it's like they were trapped by Muftis and Abdullahs. Then on the other hand, you're telling me that if they're let out, they're going to instigate people. But at the same time, you first say that you've completely discredited them. You've demoralized them. You've finished them off, both the families. So what are you scared of? You finished them off anyways. Let them go. And if people want to express themselves peacefully, let them do that. Why are you using my mother? Why are you using Omar Saab as a scapegoat? I mean, people are seething with anger right now. And I'm sorry, my mother or any other political detainee, you cannot use them as a scapegoat to justify this inhuman clampdown that's been going on for the past 24 days now, Rajdeep. There is a serious humanitarian crisis that's looming over the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The state has been pushed to the brink. We're looking at a possible medical crisis. Patients who are supposed to go for chemotherapy, they're not able to go for these sessions. Patients on dialysis, you have some patients who need dialysis thrice a day. A urologist, Dr. Omar spoke about it. And I'm pretty sure you've seen how he was whisked away by the police authorities. So please don't make this about just my mother or Omar Saab or any other politician instigating people. My mother's been in for the past 3 weeks. How do you justify the protests that have been happening, the sporadic protests that have happened every Friday? Are you going to blame her for that as well?
The question, though, is that the government says, and I again quote the governor, that the situation is slowly returning to normalcy. There are rumor mongers trying to incite trouble. He insists that with time, everything will be all right. Your definition of normalcy seems to be very different from that of the governor of Jammu and Kashmir.
Well, I believe it's the same man who told us that nothing would happen a day before the abrogation of Article 370. Can we really trust him? And to just sum up the situation, there's, I'd like to say 4 lines. Raja bola, subah hai. रानी बोली सुबह है, मंत्री बोला सुबह है, संतरी बोला सुबह है, ये रात की बात है. So basically the claims of normalcy that are coming, who are they coming from? They're coming from the establishment. Are you hearing any Kashmiri on the street? They've muzzled voices. What is the sense of normalcy? If I take Delhi and Bombay, and if you completely strip people of their liberties, they have no access to telecommunications. There's no way they can reach, their loved ones. They cannot go out on the streets. They cannot even talk to each other. There's a complete clampdown. Will you call it normal? I mean, from what point of view are you calling it normal? You've normalized violence to the extent that just because, there's no outbreak of like a large-scale violence, you're now justifying it. You're saying everything is normal. I would like to request the governor, Governor Saab, if everything is normal, please, declare whatever, like end this curfew, open telecommunications. What is this? On one hand, you're saying everything is normal. On the other hand, there's still restrictions. People are not allowed to move about freely. I've been told that once I go back, I'll be placed under detention as well. So I think it's a very warped definition of normalcy. ये कहाँ की normalcy हुई कि जहाँ औरत pregnant है, she has to walk 12 hours when she's in labor, and she goes to the hospital and she delivers a stillborn child, and they place that stillborn child in a cardboard box and their family doesn't even know about it. Is this normal? A senior correspondent for the Indian Express wrote an article. It was a gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching article about how his sister delivered a stillborn child and they still haven't been able to tell their family. Is this normalcy, Rajdeep? Is this the sense of normalcy they want Kashmiris to have?
I read that article and I must confess it moved me also enormously, but I want to ask you, do you therefore, do you see light at the end of this tunnel? Because the government says at the end of the day, they are trying to bring change in Kashmir. This is the first step. Be patient. 70 years, there has been almost a frozen turbulence. The government wants to bring change. They're saying change will come. Don't you trust the government of the day? Don't you trust the government of India?
Change at the cost of what? The human cost? Do they see the human tragedies that have befallen the state of Jammu and Kashmir? Just, for this abrogation of Article 370, what have they reduced Kashmir to, Rajdeep? They talk about development, they talk about women emancipation. A BJP chief minister went on record to say that now we're going to get Kashmiri girls as our daughter-in-laws. I mean, is it not enough that you've desecrated the constitution? Do you have to violate our women as well? What is Kashmiri land? What are Kashmiri women? Are we spoils of war? That you've colonized us and then you'll talk about, dividing it amongst yourselves? I mean, honestly, even if we were to assume that this has been done for the well-being of the people, why not take them into confidence? Any measure that has to be done in this manner, that has to be implemented through stealth in such a, aise chori chupke inne kiya hai, why will people even believe them? You talk about development. The Niti Aayog themselves have released figures which show that on various development parameters, Jammu Kashmir is actually ahead of BJP ruled states like Gujarat. So I don't understand this logic. Frankly, I find it quite bizarre that they're going to get growth into Kashmir. Forget about growth, Governor Saab. Abhi logon ko khula chhod dijiye, please. Unko bahut takleef ho rahi hai. There are people who earn their livelihood. There are people in Kashmir who earn 1,000 rupees a day. For them, the value of that 1,000 rupees is so much. That's how they're going to get their kids to school. You ask them to send their kids to school. How will they send their kids to school? You haven't resumed telecom communications. These people are just sitting at home. You're talking about आगे का हम jobs देंगे, हम ये करेंगे, हम वो करेंगे. आप present की बात करिए. अभी कश्मीर में कौन सी normalcy है? What are you trying to do to win over the trust of the people? You're only alienating them. I didn't hear any BJP leader condemning the statement of the chief minister, talking about objectifying women. I mean, it was so misogynist. It was so sexist. It was absolutely disgusting. And what surprises me is that educated Indians have been brainwashed, Kashmiris have been demonized, and they are all rooting, कि आपने कश्मीरियों को ऐसे रखा है. It's something that they're celebrating. And honestly, no offense to the media is a free and an independent media is the hallmark of every democracy. Today we have a static, we have an embedded media that is trying to spin its own narrative around Kashmir. Abhi to aap 3-4 सालों से 10-20 सालों से you've been trying to prove Kashmiris aman nahi chahte hain, they don't want peace. Now all of a sudden in 3 weeks what happened? You've completely changed, their identity. Whatever you would project to your audience, now you're telling them Kashmiris are very happy.
The fact is that there are those, the government says that if they lift all these, if they lift the clampdown, there could be violence. Something that they do not want to happen. You mentioned about demonization of Kashmir in the eyes of many Indians. Yes, that may well be happening. But do you also accept the fears are legitimate that should the clampdown be lifted tomorrow, there could be violence, and that could only add further to the divide, the growing divide in a sense between the valley and the rest of the country? Do you fear that? Do you believe violence is the way forward at all?
I understand the concerns of the government of India. Nobody wants bloodshed at this point. Now, if you notice, a separatist leader issued a statement a couple of days ago asking people to ensure that there's no bloodshed this time and that they protest peacefully. Rajdeep, I have come from Srinagar 3 days ago. People have called for a civil curfew. This should be a matter of concern for the authorities that despite their efforts to round up political detainees, members of the civil society, people are so angry, they're fuming, they're anxious, they feel that they've been subjected to so much trauma. They've themselves called for a civil curfew. For probably the first time, you have a separatist leader telling his people that, you know what, no bloodshed, let's do this peacefully. I want to ask the government of India, are you giving people even that outlet to peacefully protest? Are they even getting that outlet? What's going to happen, Rajdeep? You're just pushing them to the wall. You're telling them ki chat bhi meri, pat bhi meri, whatever I decide, we'll take a decision. We're going to do it at gunpoint. You'll have no choice but to accept it. I mean, how is this going to work? People have a right to at least articulate how they feel, right? I mean, for how long are you going to keep saying कि curfew lift किया तो ये हो जाएगा, वो हो जाएगा? so much paranoia, then surely you've done something wrong. Surely you've embarked on a misadventure of sorts where you feel that people are going to lash out. And to be quite honest, frankly, the way they're going about it, the way they've imposed this blackout, this unprecedented, inhuman curfew, people are just going to get angrier day by day. You know, I can only request them that let people free. You've kept my mother, you've kept Omar Saab, you feel like they're the reason, fine, keep them, but at least let people out. On what excuse are you not allowing people to move out of their homes? And now you have like stories trickling out of the valley, and these are stories that are so gut-wrenching. It breaks your heart. Do they not have any empathy? Forget the government. Do the citizens of this country not even have a shred of empathy for Kashmiris? You talk about Kashmir being an integral part of India. What about Kashmiris? What about its people? Do you not feel their pain at this point? If I took your mobile phone for even a day and I locked you up in a room, how would you feel? You know, you would have probably pulled all your hair out. The kind of restraint that Kashmiris have shown is amazing. Please laud them for that. Don't just keep extending the curfew on the pretext that at some point in the future, a large-scale protest is going to happen. Frankly, none of us can predict what's going to happen in the future. But just because you're paranoid about something that may or may not happen, you cannot lock down Kashmiris in this manner. I want to ask you in conclusion, you know, the administration says the Muftis and the Abdullahs have had their time. They claim that they've been, run dynastical politics, have cut the people of Kashmir off in a way from good governance. Do you have a message in this environment for your mother today? I know you're speaking angrily today, but deep down inside, I'm sure you're emotional, and for you, this must be difficult, not meeting your mother for so many days, not meeting her at Eid. You have a message for your mother? Hopefully she gets it. Well, first of all, I'd like to get this straight. The Mufti family has had the chief minister position for a total of 5 years. My grandfather, Mufti Sayyid, was the chief minister from 2002 to 2005, and then from 2015 until his sudden death. And then my mother was in the chair for just about 2 years. So this whole narrative that Muftis, Abdullahs, please give me facts and then we'll talk about it. Second of all, I think my mother would have wanted me to talk about the plight of Kashmiri people, the kind of tribulations, the kind of agony that they've been subjected to, and I'm pretty sure that she won't hear my message, because forget TV, she doesn't even have access to radio, nothing at all. I think there are more chances of us putting a message on a scroll and putting it on a kabutar or a raven, and that'll get to Kashmir faster. But as her daughter, I want her to know that, days have turned into weeks, and weeks sadly have turned into a month now. But I am going to fight till my mother comes back home safely to her family, and I'm going to fight every day till she's home with us. You're going to fight. So for you, this is now about a fight. I can see that you're being very stoic. You're not breaking down like, I heard you when we spoke earlier on the phone. You seemed very emotional. You seem to be remarkably calm. Is this the calm before the storm? For me or for the state? For you, for the state, is this a sense that you feel that we've reached a decisive point either way? Well, you see, I understand how the media operates. If I scream, if I yell, then they'll get another chance to pigeonhole Kashmiris. Then they'll again start, demonizing us. I don't want that. So I'm going to put forth my points in a stoic manner, like you said, because I know what I'm saying is right, so I don't have to yell. When you're right, you can say whatever you want in a very calm manner. But right now, I know that I haven't done anything wrong. I'm asking for my rights. It seems like with the abrogation of Article 370, they've abrogated Article 21 as well for all Kashmiris. And Article 21 is the fundamental right to life and personal liberty. So yes, I'm going to fight, and I'm going to be very calm about this for as long as I can. I see a budding politician. Your grandfather today would be proud. I knew him well. He was a fine man. Mufti Sayyid was a very fine man, Iltija, and you may be a future politician. But in the future, but please don't get me into politics, Rajdeep, because if they hear this, then they'll have another reason to keep my mother for longer, and they're going to sell all that family narrative. So I'm very good the way I am, and I honestly spoke up because I had to speak up, because honestly they've muzzled all Kashmiri voices. So I felt that I owe this to my people, I owe this to my family, I owe this to my mother, I owe this to every Kashmiri who's being subjected to so much agony and physical and mental torture right now. But thank you for having me on your show.
Iltija, I appreciate your joining us. Thank you very much. As I said, on this show, we give every voice equal chance, including that of yours, without calling you anti-national for all that you've said. You have every right, as a proud Kashmiri and Indian citizen, to have your voice heard. Thank you very much, Iltija Mufti, for joining me here on the news today.
Thank you. Thanks.
Let's turn